Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to my cozy little corner of the internet. In the previous episode, Eric learned that there was a large conspiracy happening, but was knocked out before he could do anything. In today's episode, we will continue with this tense tale. So, grab your favourite beverage, sit back, relax, and I shall begin. Chapter 7: A Daring Escape. Eric groaned as he started to come around. He held his head still groggy from the gas. After a while he opened his eyes, and he was surprised at how dark it was. "Am I underground?" he whispered before shaking his head. "No, that can't be right. I was on a boat before." He groaned again. "How long was I out?" He tried to sit up and bumped his head on something. "Ow!" he cried out as he rubbed his head. "What's going on?" He carefully reached his hand up and felt something solid above him. Whatever it was very low. He breathed deeply as he felt the familiar tightening in his chest. This was even worse than the boat. At least in that room he had some space to move around. He was simply locked in there. But here, he could barely move. And it was dark. "Focus, Eric," he muttered to himself as he tried to calm himself down. "You don't want to panic. Not now." It seemed to work, as he could feel his heart rate lowering. He lay back down, resting his head on the floor. As he did so, he could hear a humming sound that was faint at first, but it grew louder. "What is that sound?" he uttered as he pressed his ear closer to the floor to listen better. He gritted his teeth as his body lurched slightly upwards. Was that a bump? It didn't take him long to figure out that he was moving. Only it wasn't the gentle up and down flow of the sea. As it felt more solid, he must have been on land again. Eric simply focused on the hum of the engine, as it seemed to keep him calm. Though surprisingly, other than a few bumps, the ride was smooth. Though he had a feeling the driver was told to be careful due to the cargo in the back. Eric didn't like the idea of being referred to as cargo, but that was how he had imagined the conversation would go. Eric braced as he felt the car turn. He was sure that it had turned left. There was a long stretch of road before the car turned again. This time, it took a right turn. Eric grunted as he started to feel around the boot. It was difficult to do without any light, but he had to try. He braced again as there was another left turn, but at that moment he felt something near the back where the seats would be. He grinned as he pushed down on it and heard a click. He carefully pushed up the boot door and shielded his eyes slightly from the sunlight. Eric blinked and saw rows upon rows of houses, large houses as well. So he was clearly in a residential area, and quite affluent as well. He saw a street name and made a mental note of it so he could start making his way back to the docks. He then looked down at the road and saw the road markings pass by rapidly. "The car is going too fast," he whispered as he tried to look out for traffic lights. "The next time the car stops, that's my chance." The car travelled along the road, showing no signs of stopping. He had thought about yelling for help, but the street was practically deserted. At the time of day, it was possible that most people were at work. The people that were home might not be able to hear him. He sighed. For now, he was stuck. Eric was about to close the boot door when the car slowed down and came to a stop. Seizing the opportunity, Eric opened the boot door even wider and climbed out. As soon as his feet hit the road, he took off running back down the street. He didn't dare look back. He didn't know if they even noticed or if they would follow him. An audible click behind him made him freeze. Against his better judgment, he turned around to look. He saw the car doors opening and people stepping out of it and running towards him. This spurred Eric into action once more, and he took off down the street with his captors in pursuit. He ran as fast as he could, looking behind him every now and again to see them still chasing him. His eyes darted from side to side as he tried to find a place to hide, but most of the gardens were well kept, with trimmed trees and bushes. They weren't particularly useful to him. He spotted a car in the drive of a house he was approaching. Perfect. Someone was home. He could ask for help. He quickly ran up the drive and hid behind the car. He didn't dare to breathe as he heard footsteps. His pursuers were searching the area for him. Before they moved further along, Eric heaved a silent sigh of relief and started to back up towards the front door. He stopped when he bumped into something. He turned around and looked up to see familiar blue eyes looking down at him. "Ah!" Eric cried out as he fell backwards, landing backside first on the ground. He winced slightly, though his attention was purely on the young woman staring him down. "Shh," she whispered to him as she stepped closer to him. "You don't want to make a scene, do you?" Eric just kept shuffling back until he was far enough away to scramble to his feet and get away. He stopped as he once again bumped into something behind him. He let out an annoyed huff. Not again. He gasped as a pair of strong hands dragged him to his feet. Before he could say or do anything else, a hand was clamped tightly over his mouth. "Why do you have to make things so difficult, Eric?" the young woman questioned, shaking her head as she looked at the large man holding Eric. "Get him back to the car, quickly. Hopefully the person living here didn't notice." She looked back at the house, and she was relieved to see no movement through the window. There wasn't any sound of footsteps either. Eric struggled for a few moments, but he soon gave up as the man's grip on him was too strong. Another red-haired woman approached them. "Good work, Ruby," she complimented her. Eric perked up, hearing the voice. He had heard it on the boat. He took another look at the younger woman. Ruby. Of course it was her. How did he not see it sooner? He wanted to say something, but he still couldn't talk. "Although I don't understand why you didn't put him to sleep with your voice." Ruby rolled her eyes at this. "He was able to resist my voice back in that alley," she pointed out as they all started to walk back towards the car. "I thought that those gas bombs would last until we got home." "Well, you thought wrong," the older woman admonished her as one of the back doors was opened, and the man shoved him in the middle seat. He gritted his teeth as some of his skin was almost caught in the seat belt as it was buckled, and he almost escaped. "Still, I'm sure she'll be merciful with you if you apologize." The two got into the back seats on either side of Eric, and as they got in, you could see that Ruby's eyes were wide. "We could just leave out that part," she pleaded. "I don't know. She doesn't like it when we lie." The other red-haired woman pondered on it. She was smiling, almost as if she was enjoying it. Both Ruby and Eric stared at her. Eric had tried to not let his fear show, but it was proving to be difficult. Ruby was squirming in her seat. "Well, we'll see how he behaves," she added as she patted the side of Eric's face. He quickly turned away, visibly annoyed. "Wouldn't want to see you get punished now, would we?" "No, Auntie." Eric and Ruby spoke at the same time. "Good. Now let's go home without any more incidents." While the aunt was admonishing her niece, the man had slid into the driver's seat, and after a minute they drove off. Eric raised his head slightly. Ruby was to his right, and his aunt was to his left. He bit his lip as he wasn't sure if he wanted to laugh or cry at that moment. His family had gotten involved. What kind of mental gymnastics did they go through to get involved with her plans? What was in it for them? He looked down at his feet, mentally kicking himself for letting himself get caught. How did they find him? He was so sure that he had enough time. Or did he overestimate his own abilities at hiding? Still, there was no point in thinking about it now. He was caught, and now they were being more careful. After a few more moments, he slightly looked up again at Ruby, who was looking straight ahead, not saying anything. "Ruby, you were always so nice to me when we were kids. Why would you do this?" He thought sadly. He'd wanted to say something to her, but it wasn't a good time, and she wasn't really in the mood to talk. His aunt, on the other hand, was talking away on her phone. He let her voice go in one ear and out the other as he looked down again. After what seemed like a very long time, the car finally pulled up to a gate where a guard was stationed. "Ah, you're back. I'll just get the gate open for you." The guard greeted them as he pushed a button. There was a slight whirring sound as the gate pushed itself open, allowing the car to drive through. Once it was through, Eric looked back and saw that the gate had closed behind them. He sighed and looked to the front, where he saw a beautiful garden with some very exotic-looking plants. The garden was taken care of, and with a garden that size, professionals were clearly hired to work on it. As they passed the garden, Eric's eyes widened with dread as a large manor came into view. Why? Why did he have to return there? As the car approached the building, it was large and beautiful with multiple floors. It looked old but well maintained, like most manors. However, some of the most beautiful places could hide the darkest of secrets, something Eric knew well. The car finally stopped outside the front door. The driver's side door opened, and he stepped out. He opened the left side rear door. The older red-haired woman gracefully stepped out and gave the driver a warm smile. She then turned back towards the car, giving Eric and Ruby a sharp stare. Eric's belt was quickly unbuckled, and he lurched forward a little as Ruby gave him a gentle shove. He stepped out of the car and looked towards the large front door. Once he stepped inside, it was all over. He'll be back where he started. He looked back down towards the gate. He hadn't realized just how long the driveway was. He could make a run for it, but he wouldn't get very far. The gate was locked, and he didn't see a way to climb over it, or the surrounding wall. He looked at his aunt, who was staring him down, almost daring him to run again. Then there was Ruby with a pleading look in her eyes, and he quickly looked away from them both. He didn't know which one was worse, his aunt's half terrifying and half goading glare, or Ruby's silent pleading. Eric found himself walking towards the door, though he wasn't fully aware he was doing it until his hand had firmly gripped the door handle. "What are you doing? Stop!" His inner voice screamed at him, but his hand didn't move. He continued to grip the handle, though it shook. There was clearly some resistance there, but there was another, more commanding voice in his mind. "Open the door and enter." It spoke to him loud and clear. His body obeyed and pulled the door open. Then his feet stiffly marched inside. He heard footsteps as Ruby and his aunt followed him inside. "There's a good boy," his aunt whispered sweetly in his ear and gave him a pat on the shoulder. Eric visibly shuddered at that. He couldn't go back. He was trapped. Instead, his eyes focused on the foyer, which wasn't too grand, but still looked rather elegant. There were white rugs in the middle leading to a set of stairs, with the stairs splitting at the middle. One set of stairs led to the right, the other to the left. There were a few tables. Each one had a vase filled with different flowers in them. Eric focused on these flowers to help him set his mind at ease. "Hello, little songbird. Enjoy your flight?" A familiar voice made Eric freeze. He stood bolt upright, his eyes wide. That sickly sweet tone gave him an uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. His head slowly turned to look up the stairs, and there she was, standing in the middle of the staircase, a red-haired woman with blue eyes that radiated elegance. She wore a business suit, and she stood with one arm resting on the railing. Confidence oozed out of her. Mel's imitation of this woman paled in comparison. He shivered just looking at her, though the thing that terrified him the most was her smile, subtle and motherly, but hiding a deadly secret. "It's good to have you home." That is the end of today's episode, and the red-haired woman from Sirensong finally made her appearance, and she's even more terrifying than Mel's imitation made her out to be. Will Eric be able to escape her clutches, or will she have gaslit him enough to stay? Will Jasper and Mel be able to find him now that he is trapped in the Siren's den? Tune in to the next episode to find out.